You're listening to the Magicians Podcast, informal interviews with the biggest names in magic, hosted by Richard Young.
Hello, thanks for tuning in to the Magicians Podcast. Today's guest is Andi Gladwin. Welcome, my friends, to the Magicians Podcast. Thank you very much for pressing the download button. If you're not subscribed to us, do it right now. If you're not subscribed, you may not be aware there is an archive of many other episodes available for your listening pleasure right now. This week, I want to hear from you. Who do you want on the Magicians Podcast? Let me know. Get in touch in one of three different ways, either on our Twitter page, which is at Magician Podcast, no S, search for the Magicians Podcast on Facebook, or email me directly, info@richardyoungmagic.com. Your feedback is always appreciated, and I really do want to know who you want in the hot seat. I feel honesty is always the best policy. My guest today, Andi Gladwin, is a very good friend of mine. I've known him for a very, very long time. The day we met was in October 1998, when the Magic Circle's Young Magicians Club had its close-up magic competition in Reading. I was in the competition, and so was Andi. I won the competition, and Andi came third. Since then, every few years, I just like to remind him and annoy him. So that will hopefully now make sense when you hear it very early in this interview. Here he is then, the owner of Vanishing Inc, Andi Gladwin. Thanks for doing this.
Hello, this is great.
I really appreciate it. And what an amazing... This is the most amazing magician's office I've seen. So you've been here a year?
Been in this house a year, yeah. This is something we had specially built. It was the deal I had with my wife, Sarah, which was I didn't really like this house. Actually, when we were looking around, it wasn't what I pictured we would move into for our second home. So I said, all right, well, let me convert the entire loft and turn it into my office. And this is my man cave. Yeah, I hate that phrase.
It's the UK version of Copperfield's warehouse, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, but less illusions, less everything else, less space, less historical importance, and less people interested in attending and coming here as well. Should I tell you about it? Do you want to hear about it?
Yeah.
You don't sound interested, but I'll tell you anyway.
Keep it short.
All right. So I actually specifically designed every part of this office. So the books behind you are there for a reason, because I can see immediately in my eye level every book that I need to get to. You're sat on my practice table, which is a card table that I can sit at and just practice all I like. There's sections for my work, because I have essentially a day job within magic. Somewhere I can actually just sit and read books. Just every part of the office is kind of custom designed. I would say more, but you look bored to shit.
No, I was going to ask, integrating the Magicians Podcast with social media. I haven't done this for anything else, but can we put a picture of your office on the Facebook Magicians Podcast page so that they can see what we're talking about?
Yeah, of course. It'd probably be hard to get, like, as far as angles, but let's try it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try that. So sometimes I've been asking on this podcast how magicians get into magic. I know you said to me earlier that you're the standard way as everybody else.
It's boring, isn't it?
So let's get right to the most important thing. 1998, the Magic Circle Young Magician Club close-up competition. What happened that day from your perspective?
I wondered when that would come up. and the answer is 20 seconds in. He said nice things about the office, so let's move on to something bad. So here's what happened. We were kids, and we did a little close-up competition, Young Magicians Club. It meant the world to both of us, and we both did the act, and in the end, the better man won.
Oh, that's very nice of you to say.
And it was Richard Young. He beat me in a close-up competition. So for the first time ever, let me declare a rematch right here, right now.
No rematches. I don't really do close-up magic anymore. So actually, one of my earliest things I was jealous of you of, actually, was that when you were about 16, you went to Vegas and you did a magic show with Lance Burton, a TV magic show. Can you tell us about that?
Just shows what you get when you don't win close-up competitions, I guess. And you say that's interesting, because I was always jealous of you on the Disney Channel. So
I was on the Disney Channel, yeah.
So isn't that weird how I guess we always perceive everybody else to be doing better things than we are, right? Even though it's just two guys. This is basically a love-in right now. It should never have been Young and Strange. Young and Gladwin.
It should have been.
So yeah, I did a television show with Lance Burton. That sounds like I've got a lot more credit than I need. You know, I was on Lance's show. I was a small segment of Lance's show. He was advertising for a young magician. I fit the bill there. I did, not anymore. To be on his show. Do you remember he used to do his whole special and then he would introduce a young magician?
Yes, Danny Cole once.
Yeah. Dylan Ace. I think Danny Cole's the only one that's still really doing magic. Maybe I'm wrong, who knows. And he was going to do the same thing, but the story goes that he got so many people that he wanted to have on the show that he decided, let's do a whole show. It's a great idea, I thought. I don't think the viewers did, but it was a great idea. So he advertised for this in the in Magic magazine, and
but that's why I never got it, because I don't read Magic magazine. So
well, there we go.
That's why.
Yeah, if only you'd have done that instead of being on the Disney Channel, you'd have been fine. So I decided to send a tape off. I didn't have an act. Back then I just did tricks, and pretty bad tricks. But the day before, here's a UK reference for you. The day before, I was at the Magic car boot sale in West Bromwich. Oh, yes.
Wow.
And I bought one of those sword head boxes. You know, you put the swords in and then you open it up and the head's gone?
Yeah, head dagger thing. Yeah.
Something like this, straight out of a Davenport's catalogue.
Right, yeah.
And I bought it for, I think it was a £5, because back then I was a good negotiator. It's the skills of the youth. And that's all I could think of to do on the show. So I threw something together and we filmed it pretty much improvised. It was full of terrible, terrible jokes. This is a joke I've just thought of that we did, that I recorded on the video, that Lance promptly requested we remove. And let me see if I can remember this. And do you know what? The only reason I remember this is Mike O'Brien. I'm full of the UK references right now. Mike O'Brien keeps bringing this up every time he sees me, because I told it to him once and he keeps bringing it up. Which was, I went to the doctor's, I went to the psychiatrist wrapped in cling film. The doctor said, I can clearly see your nuts. There's John Archer listening to that, about to stab me right now. So it was that kind of stuff. None of my own stuff, obviously stolen completely. I don't know who from. But yeah, it was a pretty bad act, but the end reveal brought everything together.
So they literally flew you out to Vegas, and you got to spend time with other magicians as well?
Yeah, so there were 15 of us, young magicians. I was the only non-American, and being a non-American actually brought along a load of problems. I had to get a visa to work because it was all legit, not like lecture tours that some magicians do. You know, it was a legit thing. I had to get all the right paperwork. And you know what? The only way we could do it was to prove legally that I was worthy of being on the show. So I had to get letters from Paul Daniels, David Burglas, all these great name magicians saying not only that I was worthy of being on the show, but that I was one of the best magicians in the UK. I was 16 years old. I was not one of the best magicians in the UK. That was Richard Young, who beat me in the competition. So that was a lot of work, a lot of paperwork, and I had to, constantly be back and forwards to London, to the embassy. Here's a story, actually, and one of the weird things that happened back then is I was this kid and I was scared to shit in the American embassy, and they called me through to the back office. I didn't know what was going on, and all of a sudden 50, 60 people, and that's not like a kid memory, there was actually 50 or 60 people crowded around me, and they said, if you can show us a trick and fool us, you can have the visa. It's like a good version of Penn and Teller, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this kid, I was like, what the hell? And I was in shock, but I did a trick and they gave me the visa. So I got to go to Vegas. I was way before Penn and Teller. I've just realised this. I've connected the dots. I'm way before all of you guys fooling Penn and Teller. So I did the same trick, the sword box trick, but I did it souped up because I had Jim Steinmeier on my side, who gave me. He just looked at this trick and he gave me like 10 improvements of things that everybody who's doing the sword head box, of which there are none of you, hopefully, everybody who's doing it should do. There were so many great ideas that Jim added, and then Field and West and Matt King and Gary Darwin and Lance were giving me gags to use and kind of scripting it. Johnny Thompson was my magical advisor. Just think of these people. If I told you now that I just had a trick that I designed and the people that helped me were Jim Steinmeier, Field and West, Matt King, Gary Darwin, Johnny Thompson, Lance Burton, you'd think I was doing some major TV show or something. You know, I was such a lucky kid. And, you know, back then I don't think I even realised what I had, you know. I didn't realise how great and how amazing this opportunity was. But now I just look back and I'm so happy I was involved in this show.
So obviously you stay in love with magic, but you did go down the traditional route. You got a normal job.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike me, who my normal job was working for Comet, the electrical retailer.
Yeah, but you were a manager of
I was a
Comet.
manager, but it was just Comet, let's be honest. So when I decided to become a magician, it wasn't really that hard a decision, to be honest. Yours was different. You had a proper career on the go, didn't you? And so how was that decision made that you would leave and become a full-time magician?
I'm going to answer that question, but in 1 second. First, let's go to our sponsor, Gigio. I'm joking. Let's move on. I want you to promise that one day somebody, I'm happily do it, or we can get somebody else to do it, will interview you. And I want to talk about the Comet days, and I want everybody to hear the stories because they are amazing. I promise here, and then I will carry on. Otherwise, I leave.
All right, one day. Yeah, season 2. Season 2 will do that.
I left school the day everybody else leaves for study leave to learn about their exams and cram, revise, or just get drunk. I didn't. I got a real job as a web designer that day. I left school, and the next day I was working for a real company doing a real job, and I had to take annual leave to take my exams, which is why I failed my A-levels. That wasn't why I failed them. I was crap at the subjects I was doing. But yeah, I got a job and I started to move through the ranks quite quickly through several companies. And in the end, I finished at the world's largest web hosting company, where I was UK product manager. And you know, I was doing good. I was very pleased with the job. I had a good lifestyle. I did some crazy things as a real job. You know, I was flying around on private jets. I was flying to meetings in helicopters. I mean, this was a job that one day I'll look back and think, why did I throw it all away? But I had to leave. I had to do something else.
So your journey into that, obviously I know you met Josh. Was Josh part of the decision?
Can I just point out how much of a pro I was there for pausing so that you could now put the next question instead of continuing?
You did very well. You've done this before.
I met Josh, a guy called Joshua J. I'm sure everyone knows him. He doesn't need any introduction. Well, actually, Josh was on the Lance Burton show, and we were both wearing red jackets. We should have been good friends back then, but we weren't. We kind of met each other and hung out for a bit, but that was it. And then he was doing a lecture tour of the UK. It was a 2-month lecture tour, which, let's just take a moment to appreciate any magician from America who can travel around the UK by himself for 2 months. It's pretty impressive. And back then I was living part-time in London, part-time in Gloucester. So it was the perfect opportunity for him to stay with me quite a lot, because I was in 2 ideal locations for when you're on a lecture tour travelling up and down the country. So we spent a lot of time together doing card tricks and talking about magic and life and our dreams and our goals. Just like me, actually, Josh is not afraid to have ambition and vision for the future. So we talked a lot about that, and eventually we decided that we both wanted an outlet to produce our own magic. Josh more so than me, because I'd only published a few books back then, but Josh was always in this situation where he would create a trick and then have to sell it to another magic shop, and that loses all control, right? You sell it to somebody else and they go away and do what they want with it, which is not how we work with Vanishing Inc, actually, based on our the ways we kind of what we learned from working with other people as creators. So we both wanted to create a magic shop and an outlet for our own magic. So that's what we did. That's what Vanishing Inc was. It was never meant to be the reason I'd leave work. It wasn't that. It was just a side project. But there was a time. Should I do another pause?
No, you can carry on. That's great.
Okay. So there was a time we launched Vanishing Inc. I was actually on holiday, and I was skiing in Austria. I came home after the first day because it was terrible. I didn't like skiing, it turned out. And when I got home, I realised we'd got a sale on Vanishing Inc. because before I left, I accidentally launched the website without realising. So we got a sale. I was like, wow, a sale, that's pretty cool. And then another one came in, and then another one, and within a week, we were starting to actually become a legitimate company. And we didn't expect that. We didn't expect to be a big magic shop quite early on. We just thought it would be a fun thing to do. And within 2 months of Vanishing Inc. launching, I realised something in my life had to change. Either I closed down Vanishing Inc. or I closed down my day job, because it was just too much work. I was getting up at maybe 5 a.m. to do everything that needed to be done before I went to the office. I would get home Actually, while I was at work, I would work on Vanishing Inc as well most of the time. And then when I get home, I was working on Vanishing Inc, and it was not a life. It was literally, I was working 24/7. So I wanted to go part-time. I talked to my company about doing that, and the kind of job I had, you don't do part-time. It's all or nothing. They wouldn't do it. And my boss was a very good friend of mine, and I think this was his way of encouraging me, of saying, nope, we can't do it. It's all or nothing. And I took the nothing option, basically, and Vanishing Inc was born, and then my life had changed. I had to now earn the kind of money I was earning back then, which was, a salary of a UK product manager. So it was what I would consider an alright salary. I had to match that or more. It was a whole new lifestyle from then on.
So people know Vanishing Inc as an option for magic tricks and products and downloads and that kind of thing, but obviously they also know it as the convention, the session. So was that in your initial discussions with Josh that you also wanted a convention as well, or did you create that independently from Vanishing Inc?
So the session started as a thing that me and Rob used to do together. Rob James, who everybody who's listening to this will know if they're UK based. Rob is a very, very, very close friend of mine. He's probably my oldest living friend.
That's because we weren't friends in 1998. We were competitors.
We were enemies. And Rob and I used to travel around together. We still do. And we used to travel to conventions in the US. And I remember, actually, we were driving home from the airport. Rob was, actually. And we were talking about the differences between the US conventions and the UK conventions. We don't talk about that kind of stuff anymore, but back then we did. And it turned out they were so different. This was 10 years ago, so this was in the era where the IBM was still a viable convention that people used to go to and hang out at. And it was just, they were so different, and we wanted to bring that feel of a US convention to the UK.
So what was it that was different from... Because I've never been to a US convention. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this haven't.
Oh, I've got a few you can come to. It'd be great. There was a real feeling of wanting to improve magic in US conventions, wanting to improve, I've started saying to people at the session that you'll come away a better magician. And that was the feeling of US conventions, that you would go and you would session and you would learn from people and you would just get involved. It was a real community within each convention. I never really felt that UK conventions had that. But that might be because I wasn't involved in the community back then. That may have just come from my own naivety, and that back then I just got on better with US magicians. Who knows? I don't know. But we just wanted to try it. And it was only going to be a 1-year thing. We were just going to show them how it's done and then just go out with a bang. We didn't fully show them how it's done. We did it in old people's home. So,
right. Who was on the first one?
There was Coaster Kimlet, Tyler Wilson, Lee Asher, Dynamo.
Because Dynamo's been to most of them, hasn't he?
I think Dynamo's been to all of them. He has always been a supporter of it, and back in the day before Dynamo was even Dynamo, he used to come, and he was he did I think he did multiple selection routine now, pretty much the same one as he would probably do if we booked him again, and we definitely will book him again if he'll come. And yeah, it's been great to see that so many people have been to every one of the conventions to support it. 10 years in, this one's the big one because it's the 10th year, so we have a surprise guest who I don't think people would expect somebody this big to be at a UK Magic convention. So it's going to be pretty cool.
Alright, I'm going to have to cancel my holiday now and come, aren't I?
Please do.
That's annoying.
Can't believe you booked a holiday over the session.
So you also involved 2 other conventions as well, which people probably don't know about in this country.
Yeah, so let's backtrack a little bit about the session, because I got sidetracked. So that was started with me and Rob. We did it for, I think, 4 years together. And in truth, and I think Rob will say the same thing, maybe when you interview him, because I'm sure you will, and I hope you will, we just weren't getting on well together as convention organisers. It was creating friction between our friendship, and that's the last thing either of us wanted, because we'd done so much together, and we're such good friends now. And I think that's probably because we made the decision to part ways with the convention. I think if we were doing it now, it would be different, actually. I think we understand each other's quirks a lot better now. But it was the right time. It was around the Vanishing Inc time, and we decided to transition it. I say we, I think it was probably more me than Rob. But it became a Vanishing Inc event, and this is what I say: the convention would have never have existed without Rob, and it would have never have grown without Rob. But it would have probably never have become what it is without Josh. So they both had what they added to it. The things that they added to it were both so important to the convention. So I wish Rob's not going to be able to be there. He's going to be on holiday as well this year. But I had plans to basically get him on stage and share the stage for the 10th year with me and Josh. So hopefully we can get Rob to do that at some point. Because that was a real help.
Just to be clear, I'm not going on holiday with Rob.
You should do.
No.
Do you know what? He's a bit weird to go on holiday with, actually. There's some story. There's a real.
You've just
podcast.
come back from the castle because you and Rob and a group went to the Magic Castle recently.
Yeah, we did invite you, but you didn't want to come.
I couldn't come.
That was great fun. We went to the castle for a week. Imagine doing magic at the castle with Rob James, Noel Coulter, John Archer, and Alan Hudson. It was fun. That was fun. Yeah.
So the other two conventions?
The other two conventions, we have Magi Fest. Magi Fest is an 85-year-old convention.
Where does this happen?
In Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. It was the convention that Josh used to go to as a kid, and he will tell you that it changed his life. That was what really sparked his real interest in magic. He was a hobbyist as a kid, and when he went to this convention, that's where he saw, what he would say is the real magic. He really started to learn about magic. And remember, the magicians that live around there, people like David Williamson, live in Ohio and go to this convention just to attend. So it was a real influence in Josh's life. And then it closed down. It used to be at like 1,000 people, 1,000 attendees, and the numbers were dwindling such that it wasn't viable to put the convention on anymore. And what happened is I was flying to Josh's house, and I got there, and I guess in the taxi I'd read that Magi Fest was closing down. And as soon as I walked in, I said to Josh, "I've got an idea," and he pretty much finished my sentence. We take over the Magi Fest. We bring it back to life. So I knew how much it meant to Josh, and when something means that much to one of your friends, you've got to do something about it. So we decided to bring it back, and with a third organizer, Tim Moore, who's our man on the ground, he lives in Ohio. We've brought this convention back, and we've grown it back to its former glory. And the thing I'm most proud of is we do this thing where we allow young magicians to come for free, which this year I think we'll have 80 young magicians and their parents coming to the convention for free, just as our way of supporting the young magicians of the magicians of the future. So we have some investors who help with that. Me and Josh put some in as well, and we're just really trying to grow this convention back.
Literally, some of them fly there. You fly them and everything. Some of them.
Yeah, it depends on their circumstance, but we fly them in.
How do you choose them?
They all submit an essay to us, and we read the essays and take great care in getting as many people who deserve it to come. And remember that me and Josh travel a lot. So essentially part of our job is to be lecturers at magic conventions. So we meet a lot of young magicians on our travels, and we're always making notes of who we think would be suitable. And we don't just wait for them to reach out to us. There's some that we reach out to and say, we'd love you to come, and here's how we'll help you come. So we're going to really grow that as the years go on, and really try and support the young magicians and just help as much as we can.
Some of the weight of your status with your company and your products is that you're a working professional as well. You do gig, you do weddings and corporate events and private parties, like a lot of the guys are going to be listening to this. Do you enjoy that?
I love it, and it's easy for magicians to say. I hear this in the UK more than any other country, and I'm very lucky that I get to hear different views of shows and different views of magic from different countries. A lot of magicians in the UK seem to not enjoy doing gigs, and I question, if you don't enjoy doing something, why are you doing it? My entire career is based on finding things I love doing and putting my full energy into those things. So if you don't enjoy doing gigs, then why bother? Basically, I don't think you deserve to get paid the kind of money that you get paid at a gig if you can't put everything into it, if you can't put all of yourself, all of your energy into doing those gigs. So that's what I'm about. I do that. I go to a gig and I give it my all. And it's great because I get to use Vanishing Inc tricks. I get to use my own creations. I get to play around with ideas, and I truly love doing gigs. And my schedule isn't going to allow me to do gigs forever. That's the sad thing, because Vanishing Inc takes more and more of my time, and the other things that I do, the other projects. So it's essentially I don't know whether ticking time bomb is the right word, but eventually I'll have to really cut down the amount of gigs I do. So I'm trying to cherry pick them right now, because here's the one thing I would give those magicians who don't like doing gigs, who do magic for a living. They can be tough, right? Sometimes it's survival, not magic. You know, you're at a gig and it's loud and it's quiet, it's dark and there's interruptions. That's not the right environment for magic. And I love magic so much that I want to find ways to fix that. So I have some ways I'm doing, and I'm trying to get my show booked a lot more. So instead of doing walk around magic, they'll book me to see my show instead. So I get it. I get why people find gigs depressing, but I just think if you do, then find another avenue, because that's the right way.
It's interesting what you mentioned there about the money that's earned as well, and that magicians do charge a lot of money. So if they're not enjoying it as well, where do you pitch yourself in the market? Are you kind of a more expensive option because you've got Vanishing Inc, or do you try and be a bit more mid-range? Or
I would like to think 95% of the time I'm above the average price. But yeah, you know, we're in an industry where Pete Waddell used the term, I think, bottom feeders in his interview for this podcast. You know, there are a lot of those guys, so I don't ever want to be perceived as that. I want somebody to perceive me as being a special booking. You know, I want somebody to talk about it and feel like, here's the most important thing, I want them to feel like I was worth every penny and that I should have been paid more. So whatever I charge, that's what I want.
Fascinating. Okay. One of the, obviously looking at Vanishing Inc in the run up to this interview, there was one particular product which I was drawn to really more because of the story rather than the product, but I was wondering if you tell the story of Jack Parker and who he is and why you worked with him. And
well, you've really spoiled the jovial atmosphere now, haven't you? So yeah, this is, as you can probably guess by my tone, this is a sad story for me. Jack Parker was a very close friend. There was a website called TSD, the Second Deal. It's still around now. It's a forum where magicians can post about card tricks. It's a kind of an invite-only forum. And back when I was a kid, that was one of the main ways I would kind of get input and output of magic. I would post on forums. I don't anymore, but that was what I used to do. And there was this magician that popped up called Jack Parker, who was posting tricks that were genuinely very good. And I looked into him. He was from the UK, and that puzzled me. How was there a UK card magician who was that good that I didn't know of? I mean, now I realise how naive that was, because actually I'm still meeting magicians I hadn't heard of who do phenomenal work. But I wanted to look into this guy. Who was Jack Parker? What makes him tick? And I contacted him via email, and we used to chat. Every day we talked. He had a day job like me. He was an architect, and we used to chat. This is how long ago it was. It was on AOL Instant Messenger. That hasn't been used for a while. I'm sure there's one guy still typing ASL on there.
Yeah,
remember that?
yeah.
Yeah, so that was how we used to interact, and Jack was a phenomenal creator.
How old was Jack?
When he died, because unfortunately you've given away the end of the story.
You gave away the end of the story.
Okay. When he died, I think he was 36 years old. So he was a young guy, but he created card tricks that were different. They weren't just variations of other tricks, and he would create tricks every day. And if you haven't seen Jack's work, I hope you look him up. But he was a kind of, think of Brother John Hammond and Larry Jennings, merged them together. I mean, they're tricks, not their people or personalities. And that's what you get with Jack, kind of quirky, novel plots with excellent, well-constructed handlings. And throughout our friendship, I'd always said to him, I want to write a book on your magic. I wasn't a publisher back then. I didn't own Vanishing Inc. or anything like that. I had published a book or two just because I had the skill set to do it and I helped a friend out. But I wanted to write a book on Jack Parker's magic, and he didn't really have that much confidence in himself. He wasn't a performer. He actually, I don't think, really even enjoyed performing that much, but he was a creator, and he was a phenomenal creator.
So he said he was an architect, because this kind of goes...
Yeah.
And he was used to creating things then.
Yes, he was, but on a totally different scale. There's a massive sculpture in Portsmouth. It's not even a sculpture, it's like an observation deck. It's on the Solent. I pointed it out to you once when we were on a boat travelling past it.
Can't remember what it's called.
I can't remember what it's called either, sadly. But when you're in Portsmouth, look up and you'll see something that Jack left us with. And he... I don't think he ever really understood how good he was and what he gave to magic. And I constantly said to him, I want to write a book on your magic. And he would constantly say, when the time's right. And neither of us realised that the time was forced upon us. He found out he had cancer and a few months to live, and I had to take action. Then he wanted me to write the book. He came with me with that request in the same email where he told me he was dying, and I stumbled across this email a couple of days ago. Actually, it's a heartbreaking email to read. He told me he wanted me to write my book, so that week I quit my job. I was a web developer back then. I quit my job and I spent all the time I had, every hour, every day, writing Jack's book, because I knew how much it meant to him. This was his legacy. He was a guy who deserved to have a legacy that we can all keep and see. So I wrote the book, 52 Memories. Jack never got to see it, unfortunately, but he did get to see the draft. He got to see, it was at print when he passed away. And it's a book I'm immensely proud of, because every time I open it, I kind of get to share a piece of Jack with everybody. It's out of print now, and almost every day I get an email from somebody who wants a copy, and I can't give it to them, and that makes me sad. I know a lot of publishers love the idea that their book's out of print. Not me, because Jack would have never wanted his book to be out of print, I don't think. He wanted to share his magic, so at some point I have to reprint it, but I have to make a decision, because he gave me another... I don't think I've ever told this to anyone before, like publicly, so a little Magician's Podcast exclusive.
Oh, here we go.
Is Jack gave me 2 books worth of material. So he recorded on video a lot of other tricks as well. So at some point, I need to fulfill my promise and write the second book. I find it very hard to do that, as you can probably imagine. He was a close friend, but at some point I need to do that. So I have to decide: do I put that in a reprint of this book, or what? I'm not sure yet, but at some point there will have to be a reprint, because I don't want Jack's magic to be forgotten.
There we go, Magician's Podcast. We just scooped Trillo.
Oh, so, yeah, let's put this on Magic Week. Actually, I could do that now. I could email Trillo now.
Hey, Duncan is very kind and gave the Magician's Podcast a very big plug after our first week, and I really appreciate that, Duncan, if you're listening. We are going to take a little break to hear a message from our sponsor, Gigio.
Can I do it?
No, you can't. If you want to be on here in the sponsor bit, then we need to do a deal, and you need to be a sponsor in the future. Here's a message from Gigio. It's Gigio. Okay, maybe I should have got a professional jingle made. But if you haven't tried this yet, why not? Gigio. It's a web-based software designed for professional entertainers. It takes all of the stress out of your admin. They are proud sponsors of the Magician's Podcast. And if you're listening to my voice, that means you can take a free 30-day trial. Go to gigio.co.uk. That's Gigio, spelled GIGGIO.co.uk. Through Gigio, you can manage your inquiries, you can generate PDF contracts and invoices, you can even track your payments. It's a software that's quick to set up and really easy to use. I use it, and every other working professional I know who uses it says it is brilliant. Get onto the Gigio website right now and take your free 30-day trial. We are back with Andi Gladwin.
Oh, yes.
Thank you to our sponsor, Gigio.
Thanks, Gigio.
They're great. And you might be a sponsor in the future as well.
Yeah, Gigio, I'm outbidding you, so
there's no bidding war. There's room for both of you on the Magician's Podcast.
Well, exclusive. That's all I want.
Gigio is brilliant. If you haven't used it already, use Gigio. It's brilliant. Do you use it?
No.
Say yes.
Oh, yeah, I use Gigio. Hey, I will use Gigio. Free... Maybe a free thing. I sound like John Archer now, constantly wanting free stuff.
Free 30-day trial. You don't need it to a freebie because it's a free 30-day trial.
Yeah, but I don't want to put all my gigs in and then not have to take it all out or something. I don't know.
I'm gonna have to edit this all out. You can't run my sponsor into the ground.
No, they're great. Did you know what? I looked at the website. It's great. Yeah, it's no Vanishing Inc, but it's still worth sponsoring.
Check out Gigio if you haven't already. Tell me, Andi, about the big balloon trick.
www.vanishingincmagic.com. I didn't have to pay for that one. Tell you about the big balloon. So, I have a friend called Rob James, and Rob James is a guy who, how do I put this nicely? He likes to use other people as weapons, basically. He's like a puppet master. In the idea that he comes up with crazy things and says, you know what you should do?
Yeah, you should do that. Yeah,
you should get inside a balloon and do a trick, because that would be funny. Nobody would expect you to do that. And because I work a lot of magic conventions, this is the conversation that happens with every magic convention in the world, except for the 3i book, which is, you can do a lecture, that's great. Could you do a close-up show? Of course. Could you do something in the gala show? It only needs to be a few minutes. And that's the point where I have to say no, because I'm not really a stage guy. I have a few things, but nothing that I would feel would represent me while on stage. So Rob had the idea that I do this balloon trick, and he was thinking, I think the gag came from, he'd seen somebody, Bruce Airhead is a famous guy who does it, get inside a balloon, basically a big balloon, inflate it, you get inside, and it's just a funny thing. But Bruce is a big muscly guy, and he wears PVC pants and oils himself up and is bold and gets inside a balloon. I'm a dweeby guy in a suit, so it's a funnier thing in Rob's mind. That was his challenge, and he was thinking it could be splash bottle. So I get inside and I pop it and I produce a bottle of wine at the end.
That's brilliant.
It's just a gag though, isn't it? And I couldn't stand on stage doing a gag like that. But in a way, Rob has this way about him where he, I'm sure he would have said something to me like, yeah, I gave Noel this really cool idea, and well, he hasn't done anything with it, so maybe you can prove me wrong, something like that, right? Where he says it in a way that makes you think, I've got to do this now, haven't I? So I turned up at his house with a massive balloon and a leaf blower and just got in it. Wilmot was there as well. He's the guy that none of us can understand. He's like the one from South Park, that Kenny, is it? He's our version of Kenny.
We're going to have Dave Wilmot on the Magicians podcast at some point, and it will be the shortest Magicians podcast episode, I'm pretty sure.
Can you subtitle it or something?
This is what happened. Do you remember the conversation? I said to him, any ambitions, Dave? And he said, no ambition. That was it.
Dave. Do you know what? do an audience with Wilmot in that we can, we'll all be there because we can just talk for him. So we just basically started playing around with ideas. I was in a balloon and away we went, and we had gags and ideas and thoughts, and eventually I turned it into an actual trick, which was, and forgive me, I can't remember it exactly. I haven't done it for about 6 months because I've retired it temporarily at least.
Why have you retired this?
It's just not really me. I think I could be giving the audience something a bit more than this. Although they do find it funny, I just wish, there's something a bit more magical I can give them. So I would tell them that I'm thinking about leaving magic because there are things that I could do better than magic. They name a career for me. I get inside the balloon and I pop it and I'm wearing the outfit of that career. It's normally a rapper or a footballer. We're all magicians here. We know why that is. So that was the trick. But I decided to retire it for now anyway, until I can find a more magical way of presenting it. And I have some ideas for it, but I just, at this stage, it's not me. I'm kind of going into for me, a slightly different transition of a different style of trick where everything kind of relates to my life before magic, of me being a bit of a nerd, a bit of a geek. I used to be a programmer. I still program in 10 different languages, which is a bit sad, so I try and bring a bit of that into my magic life now, into my shows. So the balloon just doesn't fit right now.
So also, you're a creator as well. What's the process you go down? I don't want to make this sound too like the Magic State of Mind Pete Wardell's, because he really covers the creativity thing beautifully, but what sort of things have you been working on recently, and how do you...
For me, I'm working on a show at the moment. I told you about booking, try and book a show instead of me doing walk around magic.
Yeah.
Right now, that's in a transition stage. Half of it is the commercial kind of magic that you would expect any magician to do a small show to do, and half of it is my own creations of stuff that I'm really proud of and have been working on for quite a few years. And I'm in that transition stage where I'm trying to replace the commercial stuff with my own stuff, and it's all of the tricks have some reference to my life in a way. So, for example, there's a trick with an iPad, and it's a lie detector. You can see it kind of going like the kind of lines like a heartbeat monitor, and as I'm talking, it pings up whether I'm lying or telling the truth. It's on an iPad, and I talk about it's an app that I developed, which is true, it is, and it responds to me in various funny ways and keeps interrupting throughout the show. So stuff like that's quite nerdy, and everything has Andy Nyman says it. I hope you're going to do an interview with Andy. I'm sure you are. Called a process, and it's all about process is a fake process, which of course everyone relates to Darren Brown. But what if you were to take a process and not do a mentalism trick? It's a big question there, and I'm sure we'd all have our own ways of answering it. But my show is my answer to that question. So everything I do is is an answer to that exact question about my tricks. All you can kind of go, well, I could see how he could do that, but he would have had to spend his whole life learning how to do the Rubik's Cube, or something
so
like that.
So a bit like the way you do the magic square is not a mentism trick, is that you're a geek.
Exactly that, yeah. And there's a lot of geeky gags, and in a way it's quite hard to write those gags, because what I think is a geeky gag makes perfect sense to me, but then you forget that actually not everybody else in the audience is a geek. So you have to have this kind of really... You have to be really observant about your audience and the level of geekiness they are. So I kind of adapt how geeky my tricks are to the audience. But yeah, all my tricks are geeky. They all, in some way, display a skill. But a skill, I like to get to the point where they think, oh, well, yeah, somebody who really spent all their life working on that could do, and then take one step more. So, it's beyond what they could really expect.
Can you tell us what your one step more is with the magic square?
No, I'm not going to.
Not going to tell us?
I'm sorry. The reason is simply this. I want you to see it. And
it's brilliant. Yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Oh, thank you.
Tell me, I always ask this question. Tell me about your relationship with the Magic Circle. I can see on the wall here, you've proudly got your certificates in frames, and you were given an award as well a year ago for the literacy.
Yeah. Which means I can read, I guess. I think it was for my writing skills. That meant something really special to me, because when you look at the other people who've got it, all the great writers in Magic have received this award. So I think I was the last one, the last one on the list. So yeah, that was just great. That was a real honour, because I don't know, it's quite easy to sit in a room like this, my office, and type away and forget that there are people reading your books. So. It was truly a shock and a surprise. So that was great. As for my relationship with the Magic Circle, I can't really tell you that I have one. I'm quite distanced from it. I don't live in London anymore, so I rarely go, except for when you turn up at my house and convince me. And that's about it. And I wish I had one. There's a million things I would change about the place. And
you've lectured there, right?
I lectured there. I'm lecturing there in a few weeks again as well, actually. Bringing a new lecture there. And I performed for one of the public events as well, and I love it. I wish it was closer to me. I wish we could use it more as magicians and use it to better Magic even more. I think they do a great job. I'm not dissing them in any way, but I would love to see it utilised more. Yeah, I think most people would. But yeah, I'm a proud member.
Recently, you wrote up almost every trick that Jay Sankey has ever wrote.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. How long did it take? Tell us a bit about that project.
It was a 4-year project. 4 years of my life writing up Jay Sankey tricks. In fact, if you turn around, they're there. There's three
This
books.
is a podcast. They're not going to be able to turn around. Oh, you were talking to me?
I was talking to you. That's why I pointed you when I said it. There they are. Straight in front of your eye line. The yellow, blue and green.
Amazing.
So, 600 Jay Sankey tricks with Josh. The two of us wrote them up. We took on the project as right at the start of Vanishing Inc. Jay wanted us to do it. And back then we thought, you know what? That's a way of making a statement of, hello, here we are with Vanishing Inc. I don't know. I'm proud of them. I'm very pleased with them. But honestly, I think I was going through depression at the end of that project. And that's not even a gag. I think after laying them out, spending 6 months of laying out those books, I was losing the will. Honestly, that was a big project. I've never taken on a project like that before of somebody else's magic, and I don't think I ever can again. And that was a big, big project. But I'm really proud of them. I think, they're great books in that. Jay has some great magic, and I think what we did was show a different side of Jay, actually, because look, let's not beat around the bush. We all have seen Jay's magic of recent, and we think, oh well, this is not very good stuff. And I was in a lucky position of being able to take that stuff that most people assumed wasn't very good, that people overlooked, and actually explain it in a way I hope that people would take note of. So I'm really proud of those books, and I hope we've done something for Jay's career, because some of that more recent stuff is actually very, very good. It's just been overlooked. The
way a magic shop works now is a lot of your products on your website are downloads. So is it heading more in that way, or do people still prefer something tangible?
I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because Vanishing Inc has always had an emphasis on downloads. We were the first real magic shop to be really, really pushing downloads, and I've seen them grow for sure. More people are buying downloads than DVDs. That is for sure. But I think, and this is the reason I say I don't know, I think that might just be the case for Vanishing Inc. and a few other magic shops. I imagine there are other magic shops who sell a lot more DVDs than downloads. And in fact, some magic shop owners have told me that they don't see downloads being the future. I don't think they're right, but so I guess the answer depends on the magic shop you talk to and the customers you talk to as well.
Do you have a relationship with other magic shops? Do you
sexual?
No, just generally. Do you have to work with other magic shops, or is it just very competitive? So you'll keep yourselves to yourselves? Or?
We hate each other. No, actually, me and Josh have always had this theory that you have to be the nice guys in any industry, really. So we are actually actively like working with other magic shops, and we like to spend time with other magic shop owners, and that goes all the way up to the really big magic shops to the smaller magic shops who are just selling a few products. Now it's best to get on with everybody in any industry that you're on, and there are people, particularly in this industry, who like to make enemies, but that's not us. I don't want any enemies, I only want friends, and together we can do better for magic, so I think that's the only way.
So, favourite magician for you?
Richard Young.
Yeah, right, I'm editing this out. Answer the question.
Do you know what, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think almost everybody has said David Williamson.
Yeah.
And I'm going to censor myself and not say Williamson, because that's the easy answer, and I've told Williamson it's him, and I don't think he likes that. I don't think he likes the pressure put on him by everybody by saying he's their favourite. So I'm going to give you somebody who I think is as good as David Williamson, and very few people will say that they're his favourite because they don't know enough about this person, and it's Rune Klan. Rune Klan is a Danish stand-up comedian who is very famous in Denmark. He's one of my closest friends, and he is a phenomenal magician in every way. He is extremely talented in close-up. His coin tricks, a lot of people have seen his coin trick DVD from when he was a kid. Phenomenal. He has the flow of better flow than any magician I've ever seen. He goes from one sleight to another and you can't see the edges of his sleights. But then he does all this amazing coin magic, close-up magic, card tricks are phenomenal. But then he gets on stage. I went on his tour with him, just kind of as a roadie, essentially. He was just travelling around and seeing how all this works. He was doing magic in a theatre for 3,000 people. They all left the theatre and another 3,000 people came in. He sold out the theatre twice in a night, and that was the same in every city throughout Denmark, like 20, 30 cities. He's an amazing talent, and he's hilarious. He's so original. He doesn't do anyone else's tricks. Everything is his own in such an interesting way, and we don't really get to see much of Rune because we don't see, other than his book that Josh wrote, and we released it, Vanishing Inc. Everything is in Danish, but to me, he's my favourite magician.
That's amazing. Do you have a favourite trick?
No. I think the only right answer to that question is my favourite trick is the one I'm working on at the moment, because I fall in love with those tricks. So there's a trick I'm working on right now that I spent the last kind of week just tweaking, sat in that exact seat that you're sat on, just spent hours and hours tweaking this trick, and right now that's my favourite trick. But that'll change next week when there's a new trick comes along.
Is the Master Push-Off your most successful product that you've created?
If you define success in sales, yes. And I guess if you define success in the kind of thing that people have done more often. Now, there's a great thing with creators, and I think people kind of forget this with some of these tricks that are being released. So you want people to do your tricks. That's the sole reason I'm creating these products which is very few products I've released myself. But I want people to actually be able to learn what I do, because the things I release, I think, genuinely add to magic. I wouldn't release them if I didn't think they were something that people could use. So yeah, the Master Push-Off, I see magicians all over the world using it, and that makes me so happy. And when somebody comes to me and they're just on the edge of getting it, and they just want one more tip that's going to push them over the edge of being able to do a successful push-off, and I think genuinely improve a double lift. It's a very confident, gutsy thing to say, but most double lifts are pretty bad. So I think that the Master Push-Off isn't bad. I think it's quite a convincing double lift. So to see that people are starting to take it on, it makes me so happy.
So the flip side to that, of a magician pleasing you, is learning your product. Obviously, you also deal with magicians all the time. Are there some pet peeves, some things that you see magicians doing that bother you, or you really think's bad for the industry, or?
I hate podcasts. I have a weird perspective of this because I get to speak to magicians possibly more than most other people, because I get magicians calling me about Vanishing Inc, calling me questions about the conventions or attending the conventions. One thing I've noticed, I don't normally do kind of mean pitchy things, but I don't think magicians have very good phone manner in general, and I hate generalizing, but I'd say 80% of magicians I speak to on the phone are often rude without realizing it, unclear, mumbly, that kind of thing. So, and these are the people who answer the phone when somebody's booking a gig, so that's a pet peeve of mine. Another one is magicians who don't enjoy what they're doing. Lots of magicians talk about shows, that they're doing shows, and we've covered this already, but if you don't enjoy doing a show, don't do it, find something else. And another one is, and this is I guess specific to me because I hear it a lot through Vanishing Inc, is people who aren't really willing to put the time and love into a trick. They just want a gimmick that does it for them. And in fact, I had a call from a customer just today who wanted a refund because he received a trick that he thought was gimmicked and it wasn't. He used a sleight, not even a difficult sleight, but he used a sleight, and he wanted a refund because he was expecting a gimmick to do all the work for him. And that's an awkward situation to be in, because the magician in me wants to convince him that that's okay, that it's okay that a trick's not gimmicked, that he could learn it and spend the time and invest the energy into making a great trick, and in fact it's probably a better trick because it's not gimmicked. But then the customer service guy in me wants to give him a full refund because it wasn't what he expected. So that's really hard, and Vanishing Inc often brings about questions like that of which path shall I take, and it's really made me question some things along the way of which one do I take, and I try and always opt for what's best for magic and what's best for the magician.
On your website it says you performed at Obama's inauguration. What's the story behind that?
The story behind that is that I happened to be in America at the time where a magician called Ken Trombley, he's going to regret that, be annoyed that I've said his name because now everyone's going to be in touch with him. I was putting on a charity show for his friends. It's in Washington. He's a very influential person in Washington, and so are many of his friends. And it was a charity show, and it was me, Eric Jones, Joshua J, Darwin Ortiz, doing a show for all of his friends in this massive, beautiful house in Washington. So we did the show, and then after that we got invited to perform at one of the inauguration balls. If you don't know the way the American inauguration ball works, and I wouldn't expect you to, there are quite a few, and then the president and the vice president spread out and they go amongst all of the balls, and they see everybody and they do a speech. And it's an amazing thing to see, especially as a Brit. I was the only non-American in that room. It was a massive room full of, at least I think I was the only non-American. I didn't see any other ones. And they're doing the pledging allegiance to the country and the national anthem, and they're doing all certain traditions and stuff. I didn't have a clue. I was so out of place, and it felt horrible in a way. It should have been the best gig of my life, but I spent the whole time really nervous that I was going to offend somebody. And the vice president was there. Obama himself wasn't there, which was a real controversy in itself. It actually made the newspapers that Obama wasn't at this particular ball, because I think there are 5 or 6 of them. But a cool opportunity, and one that I will forever think back to as one of those cool gigs that you get to do. And that's just thanks to being in the right place at the right time and being involved in this charity show.
What obviously you've seen so much magic, lifetime in magic. You've been to conventions, and you've been to Hollywood and Vegas. Is there a performance of magic that you saw that just inspired you or made you kind of realise, what was the best you ever saw?
Wow. Whew. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
You can give a few examples if you want, some stuff that really stands out,
Let me be really cliche and really, I'm going to cop out of this. We're talking to politicians. I'm going to do the politician answer and answer the question that I want to answer, not the way you answer. I think almost every magic show I see inspires me in some way. That is the politician answer, but I'll explain in detail that maybe will make it more sense. I see a show. Let's just take your show, right? Young Strange show. I see that, and I see 2 guys interacting on stage together, a fun way, in this kind of love-hate way. And I think, well, what could I take from that? What could I put in my show? I can't do a double act, but maybe I love and hate an invisible person, or I have this love and hate relationship with a spectator on stage. So every show I see truly inspires me, and that's because I think a lot about magic. So the time of the show I love the best is driving home from a show, whether it's my show or a show I've seen, because I can analyze everything. And every show I see inspires me in some way, and I know that's not the question you asked, but it's the answer I'm giving you.
So right now, hopefully out there's two 14-year-olds who are about to do the Magic Circle Young Close-Up Magician of the Year competition. What advice would you give them?
Don't make friends with the guy. Don't go on his podcast 20 years later. What advice would I give to the young magicians? In that particular context, or just in general? What are you looking for?
Yeah, just something that, when you were that old, what would be useful advice, you think?
Want a little nugget, don't you?
Yeah, a little bit of gold.
Get a job.
Yeah?
And that's not a joke, because I've listened to these podcasts. I did my research. I love them. I enjoyed listening. Graham Jolly said, basically, don't get into magic was the advice he would give. And my advice is different to that. It's get a job, because that will teach you more about magic than anything else in the world. So, for example, there are things I learned, particularly how to talk to a CEO. That's a really interesting thing, right? When you're at a gig, you need to treat the CEO different to everybody else. So I learned that from a real job. I learned about marketing. I learned about web design. I learned about what makes people tick. I got to speak to people outside of magic. I didn't just jump into magic. And if there's one thing that people could emulate from me, I think it's that. I think it's get a real job for a while, and you'll learn so much about the world that way. And that will apply to your magic if you let it.
Andy, this has been amazing, mate. Thanks so much for doing it and inviting me into your beautiful home.
You're always welcome. Can we hug now? This is a hug thing.
No, there's no hugs. And but just to be clear, the result from 1998 was first place Richard Young, second place Tim Dixon, third place Andi Gladwin.
Yeah, well, who's the one being interviewed on the podcast?
That's true. Thanks, Andy. Really appreciate it.
I love you all. Goodbye.
Really great fun. Thanks very much to Andi Gladwin for his time and hospitality in his home in Gloucester. The website is vanishingincmagic.com for all of your magic supply needs, and the session convention happens in Cheltenham on the 10th and 11th of January 2015. As you heard the man himself say, this is their 10th year, and their special guest this year is someone you will not believe. I'm going to have to cancel my holiday and book my tickets right now. You should do the same. Thanks for listening. See you again next week.